Hello, and welcome to this week's episode on the Parenting Collective podcast. Have you ever watched your child pull away, shrink a little, and you quietly wondered, when did that start? So many of us are raising children in a world that's constantly telling them who to be, and somewhere along the way, they just can lose touch with who they actually already are. My guest today has spent his life's work helping children hold on to that authentic self. Alexander Kopelman is a social entrepreneur, advocate, whole being coach, and the author of For Real, Helping Children Remain Their Authentic Selves in a Limiting World. As the founding president and CEO of the Children's Art Guild, he's helped children discover and express who they truly are through creativity and connection. So in this conversation, we explore why children disconnect from themselves and how shame and the patterns we inherit quietly shape our parenting, and why raising emotionally secure children begins with our own self-awareness. Because so often our children aren't here to trigger us, even though we feel like they are. They're here to reflect the parts of us still wanting to be understood or still waiting to be understood. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. Let's dive in. Speak to you next week. Hello, Alex. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks very much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate
welcome. Yeah, welcome to the Parenting Collective podcast. Super thrilled to have you all the way from New York. But to get us started, what I always love is for my guests to explain to their listeners a little bit about themselves, their journey, what they're doing today, their passion, and where they've come from.
Sure. Thank you. I'm a writer. I've written 11 books now with other people and by myself. And my passion has always been around identity formation, youth development, personal and community empowerment. I've combined my writing work with work in NGOs and doing personal advocacy. I'm also a whole being coach. So my whole journey has been.
What is that? What's a whole being coach?
So there's actually a school of coaching in the U.S. that focuses on living a life that's consistent with your inner compass, with your own values. So for me, that's very consistent with my interest in authenticity. When I had the opportunity, I went ahead and was certified in that modality, and it's a really nice complement to how I already think and what I do. And the work is very much life's work. It's very much a part of my personal journey. I was born in the Soviet Union and grew up there until I was 13. Came to the United States as a refugee with my family. At the time, the Soviet government was allowing a very few Jewish people to leave the Soviet Union, where conditions were not at all great for Jews. And my parents took the courageous step of applying, and we were very fortunate and we received permission to leave and made our way here to the States. And I've been in New York ever since. Funny enough, I've now raised a native New Yorker on the Lower East Side in Manhattan.
Really?
Our daughter is 19. And
wow.
So it's a very funny full circle moment for me.
Oh, amazing.
So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's a huge part, but a small part, which makes you who you are. And having a 19-year-old, you're still in it. And I'm sure you would have memories of being younger in the Soviet Union, like 13 is not a baby. So the comparison would be a bit hard to even comprehend, the comparison of what your daughter has experienced compared to yourself. Also makes us
very different life.
It also makes us who we are, isn't it? So like we were just talking about before the introduction, everything that I've been looking into with you, and you've got an incredible book that's quite recent. You've got lots of different books, like you said, over 11 books. The latest book is titled For Real, Helping Children Remain Their Authentic Selves in a Limiting World, which is such a true reflection of exactly what I'm trying to explain to everybody over here in Australia. Like we're talking about the conscious parenting, all the work that you've been doing for so long is quite new here. And people really need to understand it, especially, like I said, in the world that we live in now that is so not real. So much information being given to our children to make them not be their real selves. So that's what we've got to really understand. As parents, we can still do that, can't we? So I think the thing is that I really wanted to deep dive into a little bit with that, and obviously that's been your life work, is often we can plod along, be independent adults, and then we have children, and even our little babies can be quite okay in regards to figuring out our authentic selves. It might be working quite nicely for us. But then when our kiddos get a bit older and things aren't quite as easy, like even toddler years, they start talking back and all of these things that aren't all peachy. This is when our generational patterns might pop up, and generational patterns being things that have been passed on from generations. It can be great things or it can be not so great things. And often from our childhood, we think we're not going to do that. We don't want we don't want to do our parents did, with no blame or shame for our parents all the time, or try not to. But what happens when we're in stress, those generational patterns tend to raise their head. So instead of being shameful of them, it's like understanding them and then working through them to help our children. So often those children, or our children, when they start to become their authentic selves or trying to be, they can trigger us. If they're not the triggers are within us. And they can often put the mirror up against us to figure out that things aren't so peachy with us. So your book really obviously deep dives into that a little bit. So when you say that raising an authentic kid starts with us, go into that a little bit more deeply for me, like in regards to what I was just saying then.
I think what you're touching on is the process of development. I think for me, what's very helpful is to think of adults as the developmental partners for children.
Yeah, that's
Children, if we think about, a small person coming into the world and designed to be a learning machine, essentially,
yeah,
and they're processing information constantly and trying to find patterns and understand what they're seeing, what they're hearing, get control of their own bodies.
yeah,
And the first people they rely on for feedback are the adults immediately around them. It's a very, very essential partnership. And part of the partnership is providing children as reliable a mirror of their developing self as we can.
yeah,
And if the mirror is distorted by whatever is coming up inside of us, that creates problems for the kiddos
it does.
because they suddenly have to pay attention to not only what's happening for them, but the reaction that it creates in the adult. And if the reaction of the adult demands more attention, that's
Mm-hmm.
where the attention is going to go.
I know.
And the message is that they have to keep themselves to the side or
Mhm.
suppress, and they have to take care of the adult's feelings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the really difficult situation when it arises. So when I say that it starts with us, it really is our job as adults to pause,
Mm-hmm.
reflect on the ways in which we may not feel comfortable with ourselves as people or with ourselves as parents, and not necessarily fix it,
Mm.
but become aware of it. Create the space between those parts of ourselves and the way that we react to our children.
Mm.
And sometimes that can be challenging because our expectation is that we're going to respond immediately. That if a
Mhm.
child asks for something or if a child does something, that we have to be right there. And what I encourage parents to do is to just pause and do nothing for a second.
No, it's amazing.
See,
Pause.
yeah,
Even
yeah.
I laugh about this to my clients. I just say I literally bite my tongue still. If
Mhm.
I cause simply the pausing. So for a little bit of a backstory for our listeners that have listened before, understand my backstory, but if this is the first time people have heard, the reason I'm doing this is through what happened with my parenting and where I came from. And we were traditional parenting, so do as we say. Our eldest was really compliant, easygoing kid, and we thought we nailed it. But what we were doing indirectly is do as I say, and not hearing her as she was getting older, she was going more within. Even though she was a really
Mhm.
bubbly, happy kid, and we didn't see signs outwards, but as she got to teenage years and hormones and things happening externally, she became really severe mental health, which we talk about a lot. And other children went through other things too. So that was a reflection on us. And again, you do go through that guilt, like I shouldn't have done it that way. But we should never, I always take the word should out. We learn when we know, meaning with our first who didn't put that mirror up, it was okay. So if you're listening to this and your children's having a great time, don't change a thing. But when things start to feel not right, like your children are feeling stressed, they're disconnecting, then we have to reflect on, as adults, with our frontal cortex that's been fully developed, we have to figure out how to keep connected with them and model through that without that blame or guilt.
Yeah. And I would add that in addition to the frontal cortex, the rest of us,
Yeah.
part of what I think the disservice we do to children and to ourselves is that we believe the hype of the brain, that the
Yeah.
brain is the be all and end all. And
Yeah,
very
totally.
often we know with other parts of ourselves, we know
Yeah,
with our gut, we know energetically when something is
absolutely.
not
Yeah,
feeling
true.
right for us and for
Yeah.
our kids. And so
Yeah.
part of what I really encourage parents to do is to listen with their whole body,
Yeah.
be present as fully as possible,
So
and
good.
then
Yeah.
process intellectually
Yeah.
as
And
well.
I think when I
Yeah.
talk about the prefrontal cortex, it's the amygdala again we're talking about as well, that part of the
Yeah.
brain, which is really quick reactive. So, for me and my generational patterns that I didn't want to bring through is I'm a very positive, calm, happy person. But when things were getting stressful, I would yell or I'd cry. How embarrassing, like all of these things. But now I didn't understand what amygdala was. I knew none of this. And so then that was that fight flight response from when I was a child. So we took those brain functions are usually that not quick enough to think. Well, we
Mhm.
can't think, it happens, but that pause allows us to feel it in our whole body. And 93% or 95% of communication is our body language and tone. So that's a massive
Yeah.
amount. If you just pause, bite your tongue for 30 seconds, then that whole body reaction comes in, which is a really good thing to think about, actually. I've never thought about it that way, but it is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Absolutely.
I think that if we were to ask our children what we say to them without saying a word, they would
Yeah.
have some really interesting things to say.
Oh, yes. I mean, my children aren't ever afraid to say anything, which is a really good thing that I've been told and what I have studied is like when your children have a voice, it's great because they feel safe. And I'm like, oh, I don't sometimes. What about me? I'm an
Right.
adult. I'm a human. I mean, I'm not just a mum. So a little bit on what we're talking about with shame, because you do write a little bit about that. And shame is such a big word, isn't it? That we either don't talk about or we feel it with our limiting beliefs, our bully in our head, but we would never talk about it. It is a human feeling. But the truth is, all of us, I would think, have been brought up somewhere with some shame. Even if, again, our parents tried to do the best they could and all different levels. If you reflect on that, it typically comes from our childhood. And if you had a amazing childhood, that's lucky. It might have come from a teacher in your early childhood. So how does that shame creation in your childhood, wherever that may be, sort of sneak into the way that we parent?
I think it's important to understand what shame does. And as far as I'm concerned, shame is the most corrosive of all feelings
Yeah,
we can
totally.
experience. And the reason for that is that it becomes global. So
Hmm.
there's usually, a good reason to feel not proud of something,
Yeah.
something I did or something I
Hmm.
said. And what tends to happen is that we then somehow make a global judgment about ourselves or are taught to make a global judgment about
Hmm.
ourselves based on those experiences. Getting a poor grade on a maths exam becomes I'm not good at maths.
Yeah.
Very different things, right? And I I got angry when my sister bit my finger becomes I'm an angry person.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime a feeling becomes an I am,
Yeah.
that's a problem. And
Right.
a lot of us have those things that we carry
Yeah.
with us
We
into
sure do.
adulthood. And I think that when, as parents, we apply those kinds of global judgments,
Mm.
I am not a patient parent,
Yeah.
or I am angry, or it informs the way we parent because
Mhm.
that's the position we're coming from.
Right.
So I think that that's another place where it's really important to take a pause and to reflect on those beliefs.
Hmm.
And for me, reflecting on beliefs is really useful when we also can understand where they come from,
Yeah.
because that's the beginning of change.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
so unspooling those beliefs from I'm an angry person
Hmm.
to I sometimes get angry when I am stressed,
Totally.
because then I'm back in a situation where I can be in dialogue with those feelings, and I
Hmm.
can make choices about how I respond in any particular moment, rather
Hmm.
than I'm just angry, right?
Yeah.
I'm an angry
Yeah.
person.
Totally.
So that's the way to, as parents, to break that cycle. I think the other thing that comes up a lot when I talk to people, parents particularly, about our work is that there's this drive to meet some external standard of parenting. That
Absolutely.
I am a good
Social
parent if I do
standards.
this,
Yeah.
this, and
Totally.
this, and
It's got
this,
worse.
right?
Totally.
Yeah. And again, if we stop and say, but what are you measuring yourself against?
Social
Where does
media.
that belief come? Okay, but I mean,
Whatever.
how important is that? Like, are you trying to get
Nothing. Yeah.
more
Totally.
likes as a parent, or are you
Totally.
trying to right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so
That's what's
that's
crazy. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that those are two key things about shame. But most importantly, is it's not making those global judgments about
Totally. Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, again, when I'm coaching individuals in regards to this, I talk about shining lights on it, meaning it's not a
Mhm.
diagnosis that you're an angry person or you're an emotional person, but I, again, reflect on my own lived experience of what I was sort of labeled as, and then I labeled myself, and I had
Mhm.
to untangle that, like you said. And it's like shining the light of where it came from, why I'm human, and how can I pause and not react like that. And again, lived experience, I have been able to do that with a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of study, a lot of personal work, and everyone can
Yeah.
do it. Everyone can do it. If it's something that you have that shame on, and shame is not a great word and a great feeling, we can shine that light on it and pause and redirect the way that we respond in regards to that feeling of shame, wherever it might have came from,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so, and when we talk about trying to stop it through generations, that's exactly what it is. It's like, oh, okay, we can change that, can we? Yes, we can. It's a muscle you build. It's something you have to practice. You're not going to get it right all the time. And the one time you do get it right, that you've paused and you've thought about it and it doesn't happen, you're like, oh my goodness, that felt good. And you do it again. And that's what happens. So it's all about
Well,
that.
and if right, and if I may, as adults in general, I think if we can prevent ourselves from ever saying to a child, "You are such a
Oh,
so and so person,"
totally.
that goes a very long way to
Oh,
breaking that
totally.
cycle of shame.
Totally. Yeah. And again, I like to reflect on my story because now that I'm a parent coach and all of that, people will think, was she always like that? Absolutely not. And there's still some absolute chaos in our home. But another big reason that we had to change our parenting is we indirectly, one of our children was a lot louder, had a lot more tantrums. And again, society should be like, that's not okay. That's naughty behavior, not understanding anxiety, amygdala, all that sort of stuff. Feel quite sorry for our daughter that happened. But what happened is because she was so explosive, she was then indirectly labeled the black sheep. We didn't say that to her. We didn't say you're the worst or whatever. She was the one getting in trouble all the time. She was the one
Mhm.
saying stop that, stop that. And that poor teenage kid gave it back to us because we indirectly did it. So we didn't even verbally say it. So again, when people are listening, if you've got a child that's a bit more strong-willed, that is not easy. It's not as easy to parent, but you've got to really try and figure out where that's coming from. And as parents, how to pause, model, and help them learn to regulate over time. That's a really big thing. So, again, the other thing that we talk about was we don't have to be perfect parents. And again, I think we all think we aren't doing that. But again, on reflection, absolutely. I was wanting to do what society thinks cookie cutter, do this, do the homework, go to university, and all of those pressures on us. And really, our
Yeah,
children don't want that. They don't need it. They need a lot of love, support, and guidance, and helping them become their authentic self. Yeah, a lot of the things. So,
absolutely. If I may, it's learning to see the child you're given rather than parenting according to somebody else's standard that's supposed to be good for any child.
Totally, totally. And like again, we're in our own little worlds, accidentally doing it, thinking that that's what we need to do. But if you go through things that again we went through in regards to mental health, none of it matters. None of it matters. You've got to allow your child to be their authentic self, and then that will help with their mental health, full stop. And then love and support them through whatever they authentically want to do. And that doesn't mean permissive parenting and not supporting them to do their best. And it's not anything to do with that. It's actually supporting them to do their best authentically rather than what we want to condition them to do. So the other thing that we sort of talk about, and I think parents get a little bit worried, and I have a lot of people reach out, when our children who we were nice and connected to and everything was going quite nicely, all of a sudden start to pull away. It's pretty scary for parents, and they don't know what to do. And what would be your sort of best advice with that if they feel a little bit panicky that something has shifted?
First, stop and orient yourself to where the child is on the developmental continuum. If it's pre-adolescence and hormones are beginning to play a part, that's one conversation. If it's a 3-year-old who's pulling away and going silent, that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, true.
So I think that is key.
Okay.
The other thing I would suggest is not panicking right away.
Yes.
And getting support for yourself, talking about with a trusted person what it feels like to be worried about your child, to suddenly feel that you don't know your child the way you thought you did, and that you may not know how to support the child in whatever she's going through. I think it's really important to release those feelings, because if we get stuck in the worries, then sooner or later we're going to start acting out of those worries rather than out of the facts in front of us.
Absolutely. The panic.
Yeah, and I think that the other advice I would give is, remember when the child was most at ease. Is it during a bath? Our daughter still does this right before bedtime. Will come and get very chatty. Right? Is that still happening, or is that stopped? And without trying to be too intrusive or clingy, try to create those opportunities. Maybe go for a walk, do something the child likes and that helps them relax. So anything that, and then ask, what's happening, without putting any judgments.
No judgment. And I think the thing is too, as parents, we want to stay connected and close, and we need to try and do that. But what I often always talk about is, as I'm talking about teens mostly, still stay connected even they're not giving you anything back. Because what I hear is parents like, well, they're not talking to me, they don't want anything to do with me. And I'm like, well, they probably do, but they don't want you to be intrusive. So stay connected. Like you said, for girls, go shopping, they love that. Go for a car drive somewhere, get some food, all of those things. But honestly, you still have to bite your tongue as a parent. Let them talk. You can definitely ask, is it how you going? Everything's okay, but don't expect them. You might know they're not right, but do not force it, because that makes them shut down more, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the other thing that I would say is try to find out if they are talking to anyone.
Okay.
Is there a trusted adult somewhere else in the family? Is there a trusted adult in school? I think that if they're really not talking to anyone, that might be a sign that it's time to get some help. And I think modeling getting help is really key. In the States these days, the big phrase is mental health literacy. And I think part of mental health literacy starts with emotional health literacy and showing children that we all need help occasionally. We all need someone else to talk to.
And again, when I'm doing my coaching, that's what I talk about is age appropriately. You can talk to your children. Like if I'm talking to a woman whose husband's just left her and she's a real mess and she's allowed to be a real mess, and then she's really worried about the children. I'm like, absolutely have the big cry and everything in front of them, but also you can be real in front of them, age appropriate, and just say, mum's hurting, and being honest with our children. Because often, or back in the day, our parents wouldn't. They wouldn't either show us
Mhm.
emotion, they'd cry, they'd yell, and then all of that sort of stuff. But age appropriately, having a human experience with your children and getting through it is the best teacher, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, and there's so many wonderful books for kids of all ages that can help start those conversations.
Oh, wonderful.
Whatever we're going through,
Yeah,
that, and whether we're going through it or they're going through it,
totally.
just reading, and again, not just suddenly out of the blue reading when you don't normally read, but
Yes.
just reading together
Yes.
as much as
Implementing
possible.
new things, yeah. And
Yeah.
everything can is changeable, like this is the thing, everyone gets stuck in what's happening, and I'm like, there's so many things that we can start to implement to help with our family, and it's such an important role, us being the parents. There also the thing I want to talk about before we say goodbye is I wanted you to take us through your love framework, which is learn, open
Mhm.
doors, validate, and engage. And I really loved that. It's obviously a reflection of what we've been talking about. So, yeah, can you run through your thought process around that?
Of course, learn is really the posture of curiosity. We get these little beings who suddenly appear in our lives.
Mm.
And from the first moment, there's so much to learn because they're learning about the world.
Yeah.
And if we can step away from the idea that we are supposed to teach them, parent them, mold them, and sit on the floor with them and
Mm.
look at
Yeah.
um, the world through their eyes. A
Yeah.
friend of mine was telling me about something that her daughter did when she was, I think, about 3 or 4. She went around their house with a camera and took pictures of everything from her eye
Oh,
level. And so
yeah.
it's like, the side of the counters in the
So
kitchen
cute.
and
Yeah.
this, the couch. But that's how they see the world. If we think about, how children go through their lives, they're always like this, looking up
Yeah.
at us adults.
True.
And so if the more we can sit down on the floor with them and
Hmm.
see what they're seeing and what they're learning,
Yeah.
the more we understand about who they are.
Oh,
And from
absolutely.
there, we can then help them find opportunities to do more learning, to
Mhm.
discover new things. And it's not about taking them to the latest and greatest
Oh, no.
experiences or all the latest gadgets or toys or whatever. It's just about letting them discover the world in the way that makes sense to them. Another friend of mine was telling me that she started getting worried about her baby when she was about a year and a half because she would sit there for an hour on end and just take rocks out of a box and put them back in the box. And she
Mhm.
started saying, and this friend is a teacher, said, "Oh my gosh, is there something wrong with her?" And they said, "No, this is like, she's just, there's texture to the rocks, there's
Yeah.
different weight, there's,
Colours.
there's the motor movement." So those kinds of experiences, again, if we know our children, we can help them have more of those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Validating is what we were just talking about, is sharing our experience of the world and our experience of being children. So
Mm.
I'm really afraid of needles. I look away when I have
Yeah.
to have blood taken. And it was actually my daughter who taught me that, she, when she has blood drawn, lies down at the
Yeah.
doctor's office. And I've never done that before.
You're
So
like,
now
oh,
I ask to lie down, right?
oh,
So
see?
it's sharing those experiences of what it's like to be human. And then finally engaging with children's ideas about the world. They are philosophers. They have such big questions and
Yeah.
such big ideas.
Mm.
And often what happens is, when a kid comes to you and says, what happens when grandma dies? We freeze because we feel as if we have to have
Yeah.
an answer, and we don't have an answer.
Mhm.
And so we either deflect it, we say we don't talk about that. However we handle it, most likely not in the most elegant way, the best thing we can do is to say, well, what do you think? Do you
Mm.
have a theory? Do you have a
Yeah,
hypothesis? What
that's a good
story do you have in your mind about
one.
what happens?
Mm.
And it's incredible the kinds of conversations we can have with children
Oh,
when we ask those questions. So
mm.
that's the framework of loving our
Beautiful.
kids.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And it all sounds so simple, doesn't it, when we have these conversations? And I love having these conversations. But again, working with my parents, I might give them some advice like this, and they think, oh, that's a good idea. We all think it just comes naturally, but the world we live in, we're too much information. We can't think for ourselves, and we're just busy. Everyone's so busy, and it's just slowing down and being human, slowing down, getting
Yeah.
to their children's size and age appropriate stuff, like you said. And it's a really beautiful time, and it goes very quickly, doesn't it?
It does it goes extremely quickly. And I think that the less we try to be perfect and the more we are present, the more we can extend that time just a
Absolutely.
little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember when I was in the thick of it with the three kids at home, and I was like, I can't wait till they're 18 and leave the nest. But now they're like 21, 18, and 15. I'm like, you don't have to go anywhere. It's okay. It's okay. Just stay here as long as you want. Don't leave the nest yet.
Right.
Life changes, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So your amazing book, where can people find that? I mean, I'll put everything in the show notes and things like that, but obviously it'd be fantastic for people to be able to.
Sure. We have a website for the book. It's called
Okay.
forrealbook.org. It's a US site. It looks
I,
like this.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. But you can ship it to Australia, of course.
Yeah, I believe that there are online services that will ship
Yeah,
it to
yeah.
Australia.
I will sort all
Um,
that out and put it in the show notes. But it's definitely a book that needs to be in people's bookshelf. That's for sure.
Yeah, and if you discover that people are having difficulty getting it,
Mhm.
we do have a distributor in Macmillan, and we'll make sure that it's available.
Okay,
Um,
I will look into that because I'm going to get one for myself to read about it. Well, thank you so much today, Alex. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I love all the work that you're doing. And yeah, like I said, completely complements what I'm trying to get out here in Australia about understanding ourselves as parents and doing the best we can. And again, no, we're not trying to shame parents and make them feel guilty. It's just for us to try to do the best we can for our children. Yeah.
we absolutely we have to support each other, and thank you so much for doing your work and for having me on the show.
You're most welcome. Have a nice day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave me a rating and review. I love reading all of your messages, so shoot me a DM over on Instagram. It is parentingcollective.au. I also offer a free 15-minute no obligation phone chat. If you'd like to book one, head over to my website www.parentingcollective.com.au and request one there. So try to remember to be kind to yourself and always know you're doing the best you can every day, no matter what your day is looking like. Until next time, much love.